Hello, my name is Natalie Driver Womack, and I'm an immigration attorney, and I specialize in family-based petitioning. Today, I'm happy to talk to you about petitioning for your immigrant parent. So, with regards to petitioning for your immigrant parent, there are certain steps and there are certain instances where, yes, you may need to consult with an experienced immigration attorney. But today, this is to try to provide you with an overall gist of all the requirements and how to think through the situations when you're getting ready to file and getting ready and prepared. And we'll also talk about potentially filing what is called a Freedom of Information Act request. And that is also very helpful because it sets out what are the things that you may need to know about your immigrant parent that maybe you didn't know. So the conversation that I'm going to have with you today is going to be set out in 4 L words. The first one is the legal requirements. The second is location, location, location. Depending on where you are will determine how and when you file. The third will be dealing with our logistics. What if there's an interview? What are the type of questions? What should you prepare for? How should you prepare for the interview? We'll talk about that. And then the fourth are liabilities, or that means any type of problems that may come up. So let's get started with the legal requirements. So the legal requirements, there are 3. The first 2 set out are simple. 1, you must be a U.S. citizen. So when you're submitting your paperwork, you would be providing your birth certificate or your U.S. passport or your birth abroad certificate. Then the second aspect, again, straightforward. You have to be 21 years old. Okay. Now, the third one is dealing with establishing the relationship of the parent and the child. This can at times get tricky depending on the circumstances and the situation. So if you are the natural parent for the mom, this one is simple. You just simply show the birth certificate of the named child, you, the petitioner, and then your mother. Okay. Very simple. When you're dealing with a father, it's always the saying or the scenario of fathers maybe. So that's the way that the law looks at it. So it's like you have to prove to us that this is in fact your father. So in doing that, you provide a birth certificate with your name and your father's name. If your parents were in wedlock at the time of your birth, then you also need to provide a marriage certificate. Now, mind you, if there is a marriage between your mom and dad that they had previous marriages, you're going to have to show the dissolution of that marriage. So everything with USCIS and any form of government filing for any type of immigration benefits, they're always looking for connections and links to make sure things make sense and that there is not a break in the link. And this is establishing identity and this is establishing validity. Okay. So if your parents had any prior marriages, they'll have to show that they have been dissolved. And your father, if he was married to your mother at the time of your birth, you will show that marriage certificate and the birth certificate with your name and your father's name. If for some reason that your father was not married to your mother at the time of birth, then you'll have to go through the process of either providing a DNA test or showing that you were legitimized by the age of 18. Now, don't just go out and say, I'm going to do this and get a DNA test. According to the requirements for USCIS, there are certain set aside accredited locations of where you can provide the DNA test. They will not accept it from just anywhere. So again, make sure you're consulting with your attorney to make sure that this is clear and the evidence that you're providing is exactly what USCIS needs and you're not spending unnecessary money. The second L is location, location, location. Just like with real estate, location is key. It is prime. The same process and mindset exists when you're talking about your application process for your parent. Where's your parent at the time of the filing? Is your parent inside the country or outside of the country? If your parent is in the country, then you're doing it in-country processing. If your parent is outside of the country, you're doing consular processing. This will be important for determining how and where you apply. So let's walk through that in-country processing first. So with in-country processing, you will have to assure that you are filing a form, supplemental documentations, and the fees. So the first form is your I-130, which is the petition for alien relative. The cost associated with this form is $675 if it's in paper and $625 if it's online. Now, you would be providing the supplemental documentation of your birth certificate. Here, you would show that you're a U.S. citizen, you're 21 years or older, as well as that parent-child relationship. If there's any questions with regards to that parent-child relationship, here is where you would submit that information. Now, the second form is the I-485, the adjustment of status. The filing fee here is $1,440, whether it's online or on paper. Here, this is a picture of your parent. over them globally to determine, is this person admissible and eligible for admission into the United States and becoming a U.S. citizen. So here they're going to look at criminal history. They will look at your immigration history. Was this individual admitted and inspected appropriately? As well as, were there any instances where this individual has stated that he or she was a U.S. citizen when in fact they were not? Also, please note that they will also look at health concerns. How will they know about health concerns? Because you would have to submit an I-693. Your I-693 is a medical report. So you are to go to a USCIS approved doctor, and on USCIS's website, there are a list of approved doctors that you would make an appointment with. You would attend the appointment and you would be provided with a sealed envelope. Do not open the seal. This would be accompanied with your submission of your I-693. Here, if there's any type of communicable diseases, anything that immigration deems as being a threat to the U.S., they will reject the package. Now, this is dealing with admissibility and eligibility. Now, the next form that you would have to fill out is your I-864. This is the affidavit of support. This is showing that you have the money. So here you would have to show that you have enough money to now take on an additional person in your household. So in order to prove this, you must show 3 years of tax returns. Now, in order to determine if the amount that you have is enough, you can visit USCIS's website. There is the Federal Poverty Guidelines. Here you will determine the number of dependents that you have in your household, and adding an additional one, what the amount is that you would have to make in order to be approved. Please note that the amount is 125% over the poverty guidelines. So if in the event that you do not have enough money, you can get a joint sponsor. That joint sponsor would also fill out an I-864 form. Note, there is no fee here because you're doing a bulk filing. Now, there are 2 additional forms that you don't have to fill out, but I think as a practitioner, I always advise my clients to fill this out because life happens. So the first form is the I-765. When you're doing this joint application, the fee here is $260. So here, this will provide your parent with work authorization or an EAD card. Now, maybe your parent does not want to work, but again, the benefit of applying through the I-765 is that your parent would get a Social Security number. Now, the next document that is important, which is the I-131, and there is no fee attached to this submission. Here, this is a travel documentation, and this is advance parole, or what I like to call it is advance permission to enter back into the country. So, in the event that you are applying for your parent, the reason that this is important is because life happens. If you do not put this form in place, if something were to happen and your parent leaves and tries to come back in, they would not be able to come in because they would say that the application has been abandoned. Now, if the application was in place and you needed to leave sooner, you could also ask for an expedited adjudication of your I-131. It's not 100%, but at least it would be in the system so you could ask for it. Next, we'll be talking about filing for your parent in the situation where he or she is outside of the United States. This is consular processing. This is a bifurcated type of application process. You would file your I-130 with all of the supplemental information we talked about, and everything is applicable, including the fees. The difference with this application process is that you file your I-131 and then you wait. You have to wait for an approval. Once you get an approval, then you will be able to move on to the second step. The second step will be filling out a DS-260 online with the National Visa Center, that is NVC. The cost here will be $325. And again, the information that would be asked here is very similar to the information that is in the I-485. It is determining the admissibility and the eligibility of your parent. Now, the next step will be to apply and submit an I-864, the affidavit of support, showing that you have the money. Now, this is very similar to the same process and the same procedure as if you were applying for it in country. The only difference is that there is a fee associated and it is $120. Now, This is the complete process of your filing. So before we get to the last two L's, which is logistics and liabilities, I'd like to provide you with a tip. And the tip is to file a Freedom of Information Act request. FOIA is the acronym. So in submitting this, you're asking the government to provide you with all information that it has related to your parent and the government. And here you will be able to see if there's any types of issues that you need to preemptively strike. And here, this is an important aspect of when you need to have an attorney to help you with these preemptive strikes, because they will require a step-by-step process. And we'll talk about that. So first, let's talk about the logistics. So let's say if you are given a notice for an interview, the first thing that you do is you do not panic and you work through the logistics of preparing for that interview the very best that you can. Just know that in most instances, when you are doing application for a green card, you do not have an interview, but it is not uncommon. What you would do is simply prepare. And part of the preparation is making sure that you have the full application printed and ready to go with you. In addition, you have your original document. They won't take and keep your original documents. They may just want to see your documents. Another aspect of your preparation would be reviewing your application, your parent and the child reviewing the application together, making sure they're very aware of dates, and then also making sure that you consulted with an attorney to see if there are any issues that could be asked during the immigration interview. So here, there could be questions that are dealing with the admittance, the inspection, or any type of issues that may come up and may be visible through that FOIA request, which is a reason that it's very important to submit the FOIA request if you've had types of interactions with the government. One of the aspects is if an individual is dealing with a government official, they may not truly know the implications or the results of that interaction. So your FOIA request would be able to show you if there could be any potential issues. Now, another aspect of preparing for the interview is knowing where the interview is located. And we'll talk more about this specifically for in-country versus outside of the country, but generally, you're going to get a notice. That notice will tell you the date and time. So you want to make sure that you're on time for the interview. Part of being on time for the interview is doing your prep work. So one, know what you're going to wear. Let that not make you be late. Okay. So that you will have that done. You will know what you're going to wear. You're going to know the length of time that it will take you to get to the location. I think that it's important to work to arrive 45 minutes before your interview. Part of this will be knowing how long does it take with traffic? How long does it take without traffic? So just factor that in. Also know you'll be going inside government buildings, so you're going to want to make sure that you are traveling light, meaning only take the things that are absolutely necessary and understand that you're going to have to go through security. Okay. So just being aware of where the interview location is and making sure that you have everything together before you go, all your documentation, all your paperwork, and you're ready to go. And you make sure that you're about 45 minutes ahead of time for your interview. And then let's say if you're in country, you would be going to a USCIS office, and this would be an interview that both the immigrant parent and the U.S. citizen child would be attending. If you're outside of the country, your location would be at an embassy or at a consulate. The interview would only be for the immigrant parent. Okay. So that is dealing with the logistics. Now, let's talk about potential liabilities. To preemptively strike for the potential liabilities, what you'll be doing again is that the results of that FOIA request would help you prepare. So the liabilities that I am talking about is, for instance, could there be an issue where your parent came into the U.S. without being inspected? If that is the case, you would want to know that ahead of time, because this would be an issue that you would have to work through step by step. So the first step would be that your immigrant parent would have to get a waiver before they leave the country. So again, the step-by-step process is very important. They could not leave the country before they attain the waiver. They would have to make sure that they have the waiver, then they leave the country. Another issue that could potentially come up if there were any form of fraud or misrepresentation that USCIS deemed to be an issue. If that is the case, then you also would need to apply for a waiver. So these are the types of things that could potentially come up that you can preemptively strike and have a plan in place to strategically attack. But you have to know if there are issues. And the only way to know if there are issues are filing that Freedom of Information Act request. So again, we've talked about the 4 Ls: the legal relationship, the location, the logistics, and the liabilities. And this is kind of our walkthrough of that green card application process for a parent. So I hope this has been helpful. And again, just know that immigration professionals, if it is complex, complicated, they will be there to walk you through. Thank you.